Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 174 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello, hello.
And this week, more 10.2 news. We had more raid testing, we've got more Mistweaver changes. Well, okay, we've got notes for more Mistweaver changes.
Yeah.
And we have confirmation of several bits of the tier piece puzzle for next year. Let's get into it. Actually, how was your raid?
Raid was, I think the best I can say was uneventful. So went in there, cleared everything. Um, did it roughly the same speed as last week, so taken us about 2 hours to get through everything. So it wasn't bad. I think it's funny we put out the word after raid this week that like for basically everything but the final two, like we're gonna start just bringing as many alts as we can. Like people want to play other classes just so we have some gear on other things
Yeah.
because I think we're sharding like 90% of
Oh yeah.
what we get. Like it's getting bad. So that might slow us down coming up this week, but no, it was a solid raid week. So it wasn't nothing, yeah,
Yeah.
nothing of note, we'll say.
We had our first one night clear, like actual one night clear. Like last week, we got everything except for Magmarax in the first night, and then we went back and
Mhm.
we did Magmarax for vaults. This week, everything. Did take us about the full 4 hours, so not quite your 2 hour slams yet.
Yeah.
We got to clean up our Neltharion, and actually Skarn was a last week. Skarn was not a problem. Last week we got Skarn in 3 pulls. This week it took us like 10, and it's just
Yeah.
like
Skarn for us is one of those bosses where it either goes extremely well
or
or it
extremely
is a
poorly.
or just and it's not even like, hey, we wipe in the first 10 seconds. It's like just the slow, like losing people, losing people, losing people.
Yeah,
Try and hang on. Okay, we're
yeah,
5 minutes in. Let's finally wipe it. So
yeah.
yeah. But
That's that's definitely the case for us too.
yeah. But yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we don't do I don't because I think you do a bunch more swaps than we do, which I think is the big probably difference.
Yeah,
Um
we are. I've told our healers we are done swapping healers. Like I or rather, previously I would be like proactively swapping healers around every week to get people in on different bosses and keep things fresh. And right now I'm
yeah,
like, I'm not swapping things unless you ask to be put in on a boss that you're not in.
nice.
And if you
Yeah.
ask for it, we'll swap it. Right? That's not a problem. It's just that I'm not going to be proactively shuffling around all of the healing comps every week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what well, luckily I think this week coming up I might get a chance to sit most of them because we have a new trial that's starting. So basically get him in on most things and then basically, I would just be in for probably get one vault slot and then the rest of the time have him heal and things like that. So yeah, we're gonna start, yeah, we'll continue to do that. I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But nice, dude. One night clear. They're nice. Nothing
Yeah.
to do tonight. Gonna hang out, play some probably just play some more WoW because that's all that's interesting nowadays. So
I've been working through Elden Ring.
oh
Um,
nice. I did my thing where for any Souls game, Life of P came out. It was a slight aside, but played Life of P or
yeah,
Lies of P or
yeah,
whatever that the Pinocchio game is. Um, realized again to hate Souls games. Took about 45 minutes to kill. I don't even think it's the first boss. It might be the first mini boss, and promptly just quit. I'm like, this is not for me. I'm done here. Um, but yeah, Elden Ring, nice, nice. I hate those games. Um, all right. Well,
it's such
enough.
a good game. I
It's
don't know.
fair. I've people
You could
you
always
love
play it.
them.
You could play it like my brother does. My brother finished the game, so like he just like found a good spot to farm XP basically,
Uh huh.
and he just massively over leveled, and
I
then
could.
you can
Oh,
just like crush bosses.
that's fair. I should that and does Elden Ring do like the Spectre system that some of the Souls games do, where you can like have a companion come into boss fights with you if
Yeah,
you pay a thing? Yeah,
yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, it'd be easy. Maybe I'll try it out. But But I've been heavy into Wrath lately, still on my Wrath kick. So
Nice, yeah.
um been getting geared up for ICC because that's soon. So but cool. Enough about these games that aren't retail WoW.
Yeah.
Um we have a couple of news things, and then like I said, a couple of these are going to be like quick wrap ups, probably some stuff that's been out for a little bit, but we haven't had a chance to directly talk about it. And then a couple other things before we get into I think the main topic we open the show with, which is we're you get some notes on Mistweaver. So first up, some good news if you care about merging of multi-billion-dollar companies. The CMA, which is the United Kingdom's Competitive and Markets Authority, it's a government agency over there, gave their preliminary approval between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. And so, for recapping, the CMA was the final like major country authority that was holding up the merger. It had been approved basically everywhere else in the world. The CMA basically today said they are conditionally approving it with final approval still to come. I think in early October, like I think the consultation period ends after this the 6th, and then the 18th is the final deadline for their final decision. But it looks like with Microsoft or yeah, was it or sorry, with Activision selling all the cloud streaming rights to their entire games catalog to Ubisoft, that sort of has cleared one of the major concerns the CMA had, which was that they thought Microsoft would be too strong. But like, let's be honest with ourselves, cloud gaming, not that big a deal. Like in the grand scheme of things, like I just try to use it because I have Xbox Live, whatever the Xbox service is, which is actually a very good deal right now if you care about it. But it does come with cloud streaming. Never works. I mean, it works for like the small indie games, which are like small in terms of size, that like
Right.
take like 3 seconds to install anyway. I tried to run, I tried to Life of whatever Lies of P, whatever that game is, through cloud streaming. It
Yeah.
never launched for me.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, no, it's good news for the merger. If you own Activision stock, I think you're up this week. And so you're having a good time. But yeah, it looks like the merger will finally at least be formally approved, and then it's the fun part of actually integrating or merging these two companies together. So
It's kind of
um,
funny. Like, I know we talked about when it first was announced how long this process was going to take, but we've been talking
yeah,
about this almost every week for like a year and a half.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, massive mergers. Like, luckily in my real life job, I deal with a lot of this stuff, and so like I knew like
Yeah.
once you get into the billions, it's like a years long ordeal, and particularly with two high profile companies like
Yeah.
Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. So, but cool. If you're into the merger, if you're excited about it, looks like it's going to be approved shortly, fully, and then they'll get to start to integrate everything. So, um, so cool. So that's all the we'll say gaming WoW specific news, but CMA approves it. Looking good. Preliminary approval, sorry. So a couple things we missed from the 10.2 like news, fire hose that came over the past couple weeks. First up is it looks like there will be, of course, a raid skip in 10.2 for what's the name of this raid? Amdrassil?
Amirdrassil.
Amirdrassil.
Yeah.
But the nice part about this is it actually looks like this skip will go directly to the last boss. Um, Potentially. So just based on the way the layout works, I believe that's what they were saying. So
Maybe.
are
It
you
might, or it might go to Smolderon.
that is true, which is what two
Third to
bosses
last.
before the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be like having to
Yeah.
go to Magmarax this
Yeah.
tier, which is,
I
well, we'll
hate it,
see.
dude. I hate it. Just give us like what was Jaina's raid
Okay,
in
Janet,
BFA?
Bod didn't come with a skip. That was the end of expansion that they added the skip that you could just
But
talk to the dude.
every skip should go before the first boss, directly to the last boss, and then you get to clear whatever you want later. It should turn. You know what actually should happen? This is my want. Is the skip should basically be you zone in and you can skip right to the last boss. If you kill the last boss, it turns the rest of the instance into like a mythic plus instance after you complete it, where none of the trash aggros and you just run to whatever boss you want to kill, and then you kill that boss, right? Like don't none of this like everything stays active, back clearing, and all this fun stuff. Just like if you use a skip and you kill the last boss, you get to go wherever you want and kill whatever you want. That's the world I want to live in.
Sounds like you've been playing too much TOGC.
Oh, it's so there's no trash. You just roll up in there. So great, dude. Just bosses come out. There's a little bit of RP. Lovely, lovely. Instance actually sucks, but the it's nice that there's no trash. Like faction champions is still bad 15 years later, by the way, in case people
Uh,
are wondering.
but yeah, one of the other things we missed, there is going to be the Dragon Isles Pathfinder achievement next patch, and obviously like we can already fly in the Dragon Isles. That's kind of one of the key expansion features. What this
Mhm.
brings is the ability to use non-dragon riding flying mounts in the Dragon Isles, and the requirements for it, much like Shadowlands, not that high. You basically have to do the main Dragonflight story quest on any character. You have to complete, including the 10.1 story quests. That's actually probably the highest requirement of the whole achievement, that you have to have completed the 10.1 story quests. And then you have to
Mhm.
have explored the zones, and you reach Renown 15 with all of the Dragonflight factions, which I take it back. That's the highest one because my Renown with the Loam Niffin is like 4.
Oh, right. I forgot they're a faction. Damn it. Yeah, I'm gonna be screwed. Not that to be completely honest with you, like I don't mind dragon flying in the game. So like,
Yeah, this is very much like for people that want to AFK fly to things, or people that have like accessibility issues with dragon riding,
yeah,
where there are people who don't engage with like the high end content in the game and play it as a more casual, slow paced game, which is great. But dragon riding is not really a slow paced thing a lot of the times.
yeah.
So it's for those people. It's for people who want to AFK fly places. So yeah,
That's cool. It's cool that they're adding it. They're bringing it as an option. I wonder though what that'll do. So here's actually my main concern with this is that so I use like I have a bunch of mounts that I don't ever stick with one mount. So I have a bunch of mounts that I favorited.
yeah,
And the cool thing is in the game, of course, you have like summon favorite mounts and it summons a random one that you favorited. The nice part is that it basically summons the mount based on what you can ride in the situation you're in.
right. So
So if you're in
currently in the
Dragon
Dragon
Isles,
Isles, it's always a
yeah, it's
dragon riding
always
mount.
exactly, yeah. And then if you go back to the old world, it's old world flying mounts, or if you're somewhere where you can't fly, it's old world, ground mounts. And so now with this in it, I'm wondering if they fix that function because that's gonna suck. Like I'm
Well,
always gonna want to dragon ride.
you know,
Yeah,
you could, like me, just not do the Loam Niffin rep.
that's true, and never have the ability to fly. That's fair.
Now,
That's fair.
when we get dragon riding in the old world, it won't
Might
get
be an issue.
fixed. Yeah,
But yeah, it'd be nice if you could set it like as a toggle. But yeah, regular flying in Dragon Isles, it's funny. This would be a much bigger deal if dragon flying didn't exist, right?
yeah,
but but no, it's cool that they're sort of basically making the whole world, like adding the same sort of features and stuff like that everywhere. So, um, next up is some larger news or some solid news, I guess we could say, is that the curios, which of course are or Omni tokens, you could call them, basically that allowed you to purchase a set piece, are coming back. Um, it looks like the AOTC achievement, so the curve achievement, will reward a what they're calling a flame warped curio, which is the new just currency name for it, that lets you pick up a set piece, one set piece. So if you get AOTC week one, it's automatically have one piece, which is awesome. And they also believe, or also if they're adding it to AOTC, the expectation is more than likely we will see these same curios being dropped from what's Fyrak, the final boss of Amdrassil. Is that how you say that?
Amirdrassil.
Amirdrassil. Um, so the final boss. So basically, Curio is coming back both from AOTC and the final boss. It looks like, which is great in terms of set bonus acquisition for the raid. Right? It seems like you should be able to basically kit out the majority of your raid, in 4 piece if you're sort of any sort of hardcore, semi-hardcore type raiding guild, or I guess progression type raiding guild would be the better way to describe that. You'll be able to get your set pieces on specific people who may have missed out on drops, and things like that, or if it's week 2, have missed out on some vault luck, we'll say. Um, but yeah, good. I think this is great change. Great to keep it in the game. Um,
Yeah, the other thing that this does So if you clear AOTC week 1, everybody gets 2 set. If you clear AOTC, or if you clear Heroic and Normal, you also get 36 tier tokens, which means that you can give almost a full 20-person roster 4 set on week 1. You can give 18 people 4 set.
Nice.
So week 2, you can like finish that off with tokens from just doing one more heroic clear.
That's not too bad. That's actually really good. I mean, I guess that requires luck of actually getting tokens from bosses that you need, right? Too.
Yeah, you kind of have to do the thing where you don't award any tokens until you see what you get from every boss, right?
Yeah.
Because if you get a bunch of venerated tokens that are just like you can't turn them into other types of tokens, then your curios need to not go to venerated people unless you have a lot of like paladins and priests.
Sure, stupid classes to play anyway, so.
Yeah. Then one of the last things from the interviews that we wanted to touch on. So Ian,
I'm excited about this. I'm so excited.
Ian mentioned in his interview with GameSpot a couple weeks ago that they are. Let's see. Let me just read the thing. We are definitely open to revamping the old world at some point. It is a shortcoming if you take a step back and think about World of Warcraft as an ongoing living world. We've kind of painted ourselves into a corner where we have all of these iconic locations, but we can't really use them because they have already been used. So there's other comments that he made about like learning lessons from how Cataclysm was done, and if they do a revamp, they will do it with growing time basically available to go back to the old version. So the current zones as they are will remain available. But
well, like, oh, sorry.
It's I would be excited about this because I think the zone design for a lot of the old Cataclysm zones is not great. It's
with today's lens, yeah.
I mean, I think, more or less.
Like Cataclysm to me is like where you get to like WoW. Well, they've talked about this. That's like the second phase of WoW, right? It's like we've gone through the original 3 expansions, and now we've gone and done a revamp that I think was more in line with how it's closer aligned to how the modern game plays, right? Than how everything pre-Cata did. But yeah, now you still have like what we have been with Cataclysm, the Cataclysm world, longer than the original WoW world exists, if you think about it that way, right?
Yeah.
And so like there's a chance for another revamp. And I think like a lot of the feedback you get from Cataclysm is, you either love it or you hate it. And I think the main reason people always cite, at least when I talk to friends about this, is like main reason people dislike it is that it destroyed a lot of what you started playing the game as. So like the classic game is no longer there, right? You just have Cataclysm. Right. And so I think moving forward, now that they have this sort of phasing technology, right, it'll be interesting to see how far they can take that, because like the ability to like say level through say a Cataclysm version of the world, and then when you get to max, the world sort of changes based on the max level story, and now you get like, I don't know, the 10.0 version of Northern Barrens, which is, maybe slightly more repaired and healed, right? Than what it is today. So no, I'm really excited about this. I think this is something they need to do, but I don't know. I'm hopeful they don't do another Cataclysm, which is, totally like basically rebuild the game from the ground up. I think they can intersperse some things and sort of use a lot of the phasing technology they have to spruce up the old world. So, and maybe take us back. Like maybe, see, this is the only problem like that I have with this is like Cataclysm bad from like not well liked because of that reason, like the world changing. And then the other reason I think a lot of people don't like Cataclysm is like it's the only expansion where you didn't get a new landmass, where like you had like
we had the 4
brand
zones.
New land, right? But they were sort of intermixed in between it. And like if you, I don't know, when I played at the time, I didn't really like this. I didn't really care about the story, but to me it was just annoying because I'd be like having to go to Twilight Highlands at max, and I was in, what was the zone before that, like Oldemon or whatever that southern zone is. And it's like all the way across the world, had to travel so much. So it would be cool if, as a part of maybe the next expansion, the revamp, eventually, like you basically just replay the old zones, like not one for one, but like the story
Yeah.
changes inside of them for like max level stuff, so or high level content.
Yeah.
But cool, world revamp, more than likely coming, we'll say.
I don't know if
To
I'd go
Z
that far.
World.
Like his answer was kind of cagey. It's like a, we could do it. We're open to doing it, but it wasn't like a yeah, we're doing it. It's
Yeah,
kind of a
I think yeah, but I mean it's also like an acknowledgement of like from his point of view of like we probably like the way I read it was like yeah, if we're going to like it was more of like they acknowledged like the fact that they need to do a world update at some point, and whether that's a 10.0 thing or 11.0 thing. I guess you're right. It's something that's coming.
yeah.
Or it could be a 10 dot, or we're in 10 dot, right? So 11.0 or 12.0 thing. I always forget
Yeah.
what expansion number, what version of the game we're on.
I'm going to disrupt this podcast momentarily to kill Discord
Okay.
because it is killing my internet. I've been monitoring. We're dropping a ton of frames on Twitch. Sorry about that. That's going to
Nice.
also impact the YouTubes later, and it is because Discord is tripling the data usage of OBS.
Jesus.
So we're
Okay.
gonna restart Discord and hope that helps. So I'll be
All
right
right.
back.
Sounds good. Well, luckily that was at a very opportune time. We were just sort of transitioning topics, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You want to get
yeah,
into the? We got some class tuning. We got some notes for Mistweaver. We got some augmentation nerfs. Uh,
yeah, yeah, we did.
and general actual healing cooldown nerfs.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, across the board. So I mean, maybe we take these in a couple of points. So the augmentation nerfs are very targeted um at like their mythic plus power.
Yep.
So, you know, they've done some like aspects favor, health increases have been reduced, Evan might has been reduced in terms of its power, and then molten blood absorption has been reduced. So a couple of like key utility and sort of you know spells that are very much specific to very much specific to like their power in Mythic Plus. So we'll see how this translates. I mean, I think the underlying issue with augmentation is that it scales everyone else in the group, along with providing a ton of defensive ability, right, or
Right.
utility, I guess you could say. So unless they start to gut things and make it, yeah, I don't know. There. I think we talked about this when augmentation was first sort of announced and discussed. Is like it's such a razor thin margin of like either great, you know, great power, awesome, you know, awesome like class or whatever or spec, or it's just bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's really not a lot of like in between stuff with augmentation, but
Yeah.
a couple of minor, you know, changes, and then you know we'll, you know, or not minor, but a couple of small changes I think to just get the tuning just about right. So so yeah, so there is that, and then yeah, in terms of like the raid wide cooldowns, you know, basically what they targeted were non-healing raid wide cooldowns. So rallying cry got a nerf, I think from 20% additional HP to 15%. Um, darkness got a slight nerf down to 15% from a proc perspective. I think those are the only two major ones. Or sorry, rallying cry went from 15 to 10. My fault. And then you know, darkness is down to 15% chance to ignore damage. So or have reduced. It's totally ignore, right? Yeah, avoid all damage.
Yeah.
Um,
They basically hit every DPS. Well, they hit every actually DR healing cooldown except for the ones that have limited area like barrier.
yep. Yeah. So it's good. Good. I mean, not that it's good, but I think that's in line with what they're overall talked about. We talked about last week in terms of healing philosophy for moving into 10-2. Sort of reduce the power of just you know healing in general. So yeah, a lot of that went in this week. And then before we get to the Mistweaver stuff, there was a number of Windwalker changes, at least announced. I don't know if all these are in the PTR just yet. but they have changed some of the 2-set and 4-set interact or percentages. So damage is now increased by 150%, or blackout kick damage now increased 150% with the Windwalker 2-set, and then cooldown reduction for the from the 4-set increased to 2 seconds, which was 1 second. And they did acknowledge the triggering ability, the triggering of the set bonus. Um, so yeah, um,
That is so specifically, they I it's
so
a
the sword.
weird concept, okay? So what they said, uh the auto attack trigger was not accomplishing the intended goal of providing the new buff name Windfoot. It's the second time they've changed it. Only during lulls and quiet points in the rotation. We've updated the bonus to trigger off of all melee ability damage and normalized trigger frequency as a result.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a weird way to do, like, oh, we only want this to go off when you're at a lull in your rotation. But
Yeah,
it's like Fists of Fury and Spinning Crane Kick that prevent autos. The other abilities don't, so it may not actually be a lull in the rotation. It's just a weird trigger.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it also, I think, just from like an optics perspective, maybe more than functionality, is it like it's such a nuanced reason as to why things don't proc that they probably are just doing this to like basically make it easier for the general population of the game to understand why or why not something's going to trigger, right? So like the idea of like people not realizing that like you don't auto when you're spinning or you're channeling Fist of Fury is sort of a something that most normal, I shouldn't say normal, but more than likely the majority of like a Windwalker, like a more casual Windwalker might not realize. So I
Yeah,
think yeah, I think that's a portion of it. Yeah, the way they phrase it though, like lull or quieter points in the rotation, just makes me seem like, well, why would you want damage bonus procs to proc when you don't need the damage? So, um, but yeah, so that's the Windwalker notes. They're still getting some changes, looking at the 2-set and 4-set mostly, which is good. Still, some nice stuff there. Um, but yeah, on to the Mistweaver changes. So there was a couple of things that were announced, and then they actually made a blue post for Mistweaver, which, by the way, I believe is the first blue post since they mentioned they were going to make a blue post during Shadowlands beta that's been like directly related to Mistweaver.
so you've been waiting
Um,
for this a while.
yeah, I don't know if you remember. Like, let's take a little time machine back. I don't know if it was actually during Shadowlands beta, but like during Shadowlands, there was like a big post about how they're changing things with Mistweaver, and they're like, we're gonna come back later and like talk about it. They did that for every class. So like, these are all the things we're changing, looking at, and then like we'll follow up through this thing. Mistweaver only ever got the introductory post. We never got any follow ups. Literally from like the time
What
that
a
went
game.
live until now. So
What a game.
like you got to take the wins when you get them. We got a blue post. Congratulations, us. But before we get into that, there was a couple things in the notes that came out. So the first one was since they were increasing all of our single target healing last round, they did miss one ability, which was the Soothing Mist from Jade's Serpent statue. So that got a 40% increase in healing. That's in line with just the other Soothing Mist updates they made in the previous version of this, the PCR last week. So that's good. They clarified and sort of put into words what we already knew, which was the 4-set now stores up to 20% of all healing, was 15%. So that was already known. They just didn't make a direct note about it. Um, and then Unison's range, which if you're not familiar with Unison, Unison is the capstone talent that makes your Soothing Mist channel on a second target.
Mm-hmm.
They increased that range from from 15 yards to 40 yards, which is really good considering, yeah, just where
I don't
your
know how
statue sits
you
in movement.
like. You would have to like drop your statue in melee and then do the unison
Well,
in
it's
melee.
the unison buff is off of the person you're targeting with Soothing
Oh,
Mist. It'll
okay.
target someone within 15 yards there. So really, it was like if you target someone melee, it's going to heal someone melee. Now it
Okay.
should heal potentially another injured target, a little bit wider range.
Yeah.
But then the big change, which I'll say many people not exactly excited about, was to Healing Elixir. So Healing Elixir, if has been redesigned to be a passive only effect. So previously, Healing Elixir, of course, was the defensive ability where if you hit the button, it would heal you for a percentage of your health. And then it would also auto trigger if you were below a certain percentage. And so it was a nice little like you could use it proactively if you needed it, or it would also proc if you got low. So what they redesigned it to is now it's fully passive. You will consume a healing elixir when you drop below 35% health and are not in a loss of control effect, instantly healing you for 15% of your maximum health, and you'll generate one healing elixir every 30 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. And so the idea is they wanted to add, and they clarified this in the blue post and sort of flip between the two now. But basically, what they're doing is they're just providing a sort of a more passive defensive ability to Mistweaver,
Yeah.
which is not something you need to manage or trigger and things like that. The problem that I have with this statement is that old healing elixir did have a auto proc component to it. That part's not new. They just really took away the ability to be proactive with hitting it.
I think
Um,
that Brewmaster has probably put the fear of God in them with regards to action bar space, right? Like Brewmaster has a
yeah,
lot of buttons, and it's a constant complaint from the community. And so I think they are cognizant of going, okay, in 10.2, we're giving you an extra button that in order to really be, you know, the best Mistweaver you can be, you have to take and you have to use well.
mhm.
Especially a low cooldown ability like Healing Elixir.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was used primarily. I mean, you won't find healing elixir in a lot of like standard raid builds and things like that, because generally speaking, as an HPS ability, it's not very good,
Yeah,
right? However, where you'd see it mostly used is actually in Mythic Plus, where being able to heal yourself, like if you're at sitting at 80% and having a button to just get you to 100 because you need to be at 100 to survive the next ability coming,
right.
is just helpful. It was also it was off the GCD. So it's
Yeah.
something you could hit whenever you wanted. So you could hit it, be healing someone else, and then you're basically, two people are now safe in your group.
Is Healing Elixir currently in the Mistweaver tree?
No, it's I
Okay.
think it's in
It's
the
only
class tree.
Brewmaster.
Oh, it's only Brewmaster.
Yeah.
I thought we had it. Do we not have it in our tree? I thought we
I
did. Now I'm
don't
gonna
think
look like
Mistweaver
an
has
idiot.
it.
Well, when we did have it, it was very
Yeah.
good.
It
Um,
was in the tree. It was on a shared row for everybody.
gotcha.
Maybe you have it in your current tree.
Yeah, we do have it in our current tree. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
But it's in the Mistweaver tree.
Yeah.
So, but
Windwalker
yeah,
doesn't
it's
have
just
it.
yeah, Windwalker doesn't. Yeah. So, I knew we did. You scared me for a second. um, but yeah, so it's basically, yeah, they've changed it to more passive ability. So, this is the first iteration of it. So there was a lot of feedback that I know that we gave, particularly from the Mythic Plus side, gave about how um this didn't really feel great. Now, in the blue post that followed, because we only got that data mine change to start with, then Blizzard
Yeah.
did make this blue post. And basically, what they said, which is interesting, is that they want to remove the button that Healing Elixir is and replace it with a button called Expel Harm, which, if you're new to Mistweaver, you might not know this ability exists. We have it today. No one ever presses it. I don't actually have it bound on my bars.
There's a lot
I don't
of
actually.
for reference, there's a lot of talents in the class tree that interact with Expel Harm. And all of those are dead for Mistweaver right now. You path through some of them in order to pick up other healing nodes, but Expel Harm itself you don't use.
Yeah, that's not a button you use. So what they're doing is they're basically sort of essentially increasing the power of expel harm and making it more of a single target, basically making it take over the old healing elixir position. So giving us basically two new defensive buttons or two new defensive abilities, right? They're making healing elixir passive, taking some of, to your point, the button strain off of Mistweaver, but then also giving us a buffed. Well, I'm assuming it'll be buffed, but a more potent healing elixir that basically would take the position of, or sorry, a more potent expel harm, which will then take the take the take the position of what healing elixir used to be. So basically, gain potentially a passive like heal when we get low,
Yeah.
um, and then also can continue to have the active healing component of it. So we'll see how this works out. I mean, this is their sort of none of the expel harm changes have been implemented, so we don't know exactly what they mean. But it seems like they're sort of that's their direction. They have said so currently today with Expel Harm, if you cast Expel Harm while you're on the person you're soothing using Soothing Mist on, it like duplicates the healing on you and that person. They're removing that in this version. So it seems like Expel Harm's turning into just a like
Personal.
button you press to heal yourself, like a
Yeah.
personal heal, basically, like a desperate prayer, but
Yeah.
hopefully on a lower cooldown.
I I have very mixed feelings about making this kind of thing on GCD.
Yeah,
Like personal defensives on the GCD suck. It's just it sucks. Like this
yeah,
has been super apparent for Brewmaster. Like I played Blood DK in Vault of the Incarnates. Anti-Magic Shell is off the GCD. It's extremely good. It fills a very similar role to Celestial Brew. You use it in very many of the same scenarios, and it feels so much better to be off the GCD. Going
hmm
back to Brewmaster for Aberrus, just Celestial Brew being on the like you get so used to being able to precisely time your AMS that when you try and do it with Celestial Brew, you just miss the window and die.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, and it's also because it if they keep Expel Harm on the GCD, at least for Mistweaver, there's generally always going to be another button you want to press other than Expel Harm, depending on
Yeah,
what they do with it, right? Like you could cast Vivify on yourself, and then you're not only healing yourself, but you're healing maybe someone in your party in your raid also that might need it. So I mean, I think in my mind, we'll see exactly what this looks like. A couple people have sort of put out that like it would be nice if Expel Harm included not only healing but like a damage reduction, like a fade almost,
yeah,
right? Or like reduce the healing really low and give us a DR for a couple of seconds. Um, so that would be a nice change. But we'll see how this all plays out at the end of the day. But they're looking at Expel Harm. It honestly hasn't been a button we've pressed in years. To be fair, I think I've pressed this button more on the one tier that I tanked in
oh yeah,
Nyalotha.
you press it as
Uh,
Brewmaster. This is
yeah, but not at
so
all as a Mistweaver. So in like the 10 years I played this class, respect.
like Brewmaster has a bunch of special handling in the Expel Harm talents that make them apply to Gift of the Ox when consumed by Expel Harm. Specifically Strength of Spirit, which makes them heal for double when you're low
Oh, okay.
health. And that lets you get, basically a lay on hands for yourself.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
which is just extremely, extremely potent. So you do press it as Brewmaster, but like at least for Brewmaster, it's got like a reduced GCD. It's got like a 0.75 second GCD, and maybe for I don't know. Like there are times that comes into play. It's way less like there's the preventative versus reactionary thing for defensive cooldowns, and Celestial Brew is preventative. You want to push it beforehand, and it really sucks to have that on the GCD. It feels super bad. And then
Yeah.
Expel Harm, like occasionally you run into things, but it's fundamentally a reactive button, and it's okay to have that be on the GCD. If it's a lot more like Death Strike, right, where Death Strike's on the
Right.
GCD and feels fine. Death Strike feels good. Expel Harm, like hitting Expel Harm and just having it top you is just like it feels fine. It's fine. So this one I feel like Mistweaver may interact with it a little bit differently because you're gonna have to choose between healing somebody else or healing
Yeah.
yourself. But that's I guess a choice you already kind of have to make when you choose who to target with a Vivify or something.
Exactly. And it could be good like in movement intent, like where you're moving and assuming it says it's instant cast self, like
Yeah,
you could use it on yourself as you're moving. So we'll see what the final like breakout of how they build Expel Harm for us. But yeah, it looks like they want us to start pressing it more, which will be fun. And the only other final note as a part of this blue post, which is actually extremely good news. I mentioned this last week, but our four set, not all healing that we do feeds into the four set currently on PTR. And so Blizzard came out and basically said like all healing aside from the other accumulators, so healing from Chi Harmony or Lessons of Anger, um, is intended to contribute to the final healing of the burst of your four set.
yeah,
So yeah, so good news there is that Blizzard at least acknowledges that they are missing incorporating some of the healing we do into the four set bonus, which will only increase four set power. So
yeah.
good news all around for Mistweavers. New buttons to press, little new look on our defensive capabilities, and tier set, solid tier set changes. So It's very weird to be a Mistweaver right now. I mean, most people are just waiting for them to like
Yeah,
pull the
the
rug
shoe to
out,
drop.
which is
Yeah.
yeah, which is typically what happens. But I mean, all the changes right now are have been solid, and I mean, the single target healing changes we've gotten are just just sort of an effect of Blizzard's overall healing redesign. So it's not specific to Mistweaver, right? Like other healers have, I've seen similar tuning with their more single target focus spells. So, um, but yeah, that is mostly actually all of the Mistweaver changes I'll say for this PTR. So some good things to talk about. Maybe next week we'll get the Expel Harm. You know, at least the first look at what Expel Harm is going to look like for us,
Yeah.
and we can start talking a little bit more about that. But yeah,
Honestly,
the
like
DR
one of the biggest things is I think you're about to bring this up. All the DR cooldowns getting nerfed. Mistweaver doesn't have one. That elevates Mistweaver even without buffing Mistweaver directly.
exactly. Yeah, I mean it's that where a lot of people it's of course tier list season, and if you're in Mistweaver Lounge or Duck Lounge as we call it, don't post your stupid tier list because they don't mean anything. It will get you in trouble. But in any event, it is tier list season, so I mean everything tuning wise is up in the air. Like you don't really know anything until you get to start testing some of the mythic bosses. But now Mistweaver looks to be in a good position, and I think right now, barring any major, I mean, well, there's going to be major changes, but in the current grand scheme of things, our four set is probably the strongest of the other healing classes, which is nice position to be in. So
Yeah.
um
Speaking of raid testing, um,
mm,
we tested supposed to be actually the remaining four heroic bosses this week. We tested three of them. One of them got skipped due to technical issues, and actually those issues manifested when people were doing the normal runs. Some of the mechanics just didn't function. Like it was broken scripts. And I
mhm.
don't know if that was like okay, we need to go back and redesign some bits of this, so we're just not going to finish implementing it, or if it was a we couldn't get the scripts working and we need more time to get the scripts working. Either way, we tested Volcaros, Nimue, and Tindril. What's his name? The Dragonriding boss.
Okay.
Tindril Stage Swift, I think is what it is. And of those, Volcaros and Nimue are both kind of currently like what I've been calling the Neo Patchwork kind of bosses, where they're the
Okay.
Sledgefish style, guarding the first one style. They're a boss with a specific, uh, usually a specific enrage, but they're very much just a throughput test of the player. Mechanics are very straightforward. The goal is just to do the most biggest numbers you can do for the whole duration of the fight, and kill it before it kills you. Very much just a kill it before it kills you kind of ordeal, but with more mechanics than actual patchwork by a lot.
Yeah.
And in that regard, Volcaros feels good. It maybe needs, well, I guess like Mythic adds a lot of positioning constraints to it. The Mythic mechanic currently listed in the Dungeon Journal, which we haven't tested yet, this was heroic testing, is that you have, well, I guess to lay some groundwork, he's a big snake. He puts debuffs on people that represent little snakes that do damage and make you spread. And when they expire, those little snakes slither to other targets and debuff them. And so you just have these debuffs kind of cycling around through the raid all the time, and those people need targeted healing, and they need to not be stacked and all this stuff. Well, on Mythic, every time they are going to switch targets, you need to have people soak the person that had the debuff. So there's this
Gotcha.
extra positioning constraint going on, that I think is going to make it just a good fight. On heroic testing, the numbers were all really low, so it just was not like the healers were bored, the DPS check was trivial, just was not a great heroic encounter. But I think that entirely gets fixed with bigger numbers. Like it's a big snake. You're in kind of the radiance of Ajara, kind of like circular platform where the boss is in the center and you're on a ring outside. It forces the raid to split. One group has to go right, one group has to go left. There's a big group soak that happens on each side, and you have to have enough people in each of them. It's like minimum four. If you the kind of like if you don't have at least four, it wipes the raid kind of deal.
Hmm.
And you move those leave like permanent puddles, and you just move around the room, and eventually meet back up at the other side of the donut And then if the boss isn't dead, he hard enrages and you all die.
Okay, okay.
Um,
Interesting.
that boss seems fine. Nimue does not. Nimue actually, if there's a Skarn of this tier, it's Nimue.
Oh no. Okay.
And much like Skarn had a bunch of implementation issues and just like weird jank and unclear mechanics on his heroic testing, so does Nimue. Nimue's
No.
core conceit is that there's these lines on the floor that have walls that spawn from them, and you can cross the walls, kind of like the Sisters of the Moon boss from Tomb of Sargeras. Crossing
Okay.
them gives you a debuff. Heroic Sisters of the Moon, it only gave you a debuff, right? It didn't give the rated debuff. And so you needed to cross them for certain mechanics. There's these lines that go out and chase people, and you have to drag them through a wall. And if you don't, it blows up the raid. If you do, it does a little bit of damage to you. So you take them through a wall, and then you soak it, and it's fine. And then periodically the wall's locations change. But just throughout the boss, everything just had really mechanical, technical issues. And the fight as a whole was just really slow and did not have, like, most of the time, most of the players had no mechanics.
God, that's awful. Yeah.
So, like, I actually thought this boss was going to get removed from testing too because it had so few mechanics listed and it just doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, like if you're playing in melee, ground targeted effects are extremely janky and you basically have to use an at player macro in order to make them reliably go off, which for me at least means changing all of my macros from at cursor to at player.
Nice.
Or you have to go with the 2-click approach where you like hit the button that gives you the targeting reticle and you place it. Otherwise, you can't really target it effectively because it just won't go off. The walls, when you cross them, sometimes will give you 2 stacks of the debuff. Actually, not sometimes. Frequently will give you 2 stacks of the debuff. The
Gotcha.
lines that
Okay.
you're supposed to take through the walls. When you take them through the wall, there's a delay sometimes before you can soak them. But you can't tell from the animation of the thing that's chasing you when it's safe to soak. But they don't
Gotcha.
immediately on crossing a wall turn off, basically. See, what we kind of ended up realizing is we after the testing is that we were having people like soak them immediately after they went through the wall, and they had not always turned off yet, even though they did go through a wall.
Gotcha. Yeah, that could be. Hopefully, that's just due to like maybe that's just PTR lag issue.
It
Like you know
it
what I mean?
could be, but also
Like a
like
little bit of yeah. That jank though is that's annoying.
yeah, and then
Very
like
annoying.
the tank the tank mechanic is this very it's like a Zymox thing where you take it and you run away.
Yeah.
And it's just like Volcaros had this issue where everything's red. The floor is red, the mechanics are red, but at least like for the most part, it didn't really matter. Like it didn't really matter. The only thing you had to not stand in is like very bright and clear,
Uh-huh.
and everything that you did have to stand in, you knew where it was going to spawn, so it didn't matter if you could see it super clearly. Volcaros red on red would be nice to see that fixed, but ultimately not that big of a deal. Nimue, everything's green, and it was a
Nice.
major problem.
I can imagine because a lot of like healing spells are green on the ground too, or like
That is true, but also like the tank debuff is this very light translucent green, and the boss does a cast on the tank. And if you
mhm.
happen to miss the cast that's the tank debuff, which is the same length, same like everything as the regular cast, it also has this really, really, really annoying thing where it does if you taunt during it, it'll apply to the target that taunted during it.
Oh, so it swaps. Okay.
Like traditionally with
Yeah.
caster bosses, you want to taunt during the tank mechanic
Yeah.
cast. So that the person with the tank mechanic doesn't immediately get the next cast on them. Because if you taunt during a regular cast, she doesn't switch targets.
That's awful. That's
Yeah.
got to be fixed.
Yeah.
That's got to be fixed.
So that was really annoying. But anyway, if you missed seeing the cast and you don't have bigwigs or a weak aura yelling at you that you've got the debuff, you basically couldn't see it.
Gotcha.
So that was really annoying. On the whole, the boss was just like, even if they fix all the technical issues, and there's another mechanic that just like basically didn't come into play. Like the walls will explode at times and they'll leave like puddles, and if you stand in the puddles, then you take 99% reduced damage from the dot from crossing it. But they didn't really line up with any of the mechanics that forced you to cross it. And
Gotcha.
you can't like you can't risk kiting one of these lines around in a circle inside one of the small segments
Right.
without crossing a line. So you can't like wait for it to spawn one.
Yeah.
It was just like
That's
it just like
weird. Yeah.
structurally the boss has a lot of problems in ways that remind me of Skarn. Skarn, the timers did not fit together in a cohesive way that made the boss fun.
Right.
Nimue, the boss is just really slow. Like, and there's actually one final thing for it. Uh, every time you get through the intermission phase where she like spawns new walls, the next intermission is closer, but none of the other mechanics seem to speed up.
Right.
Maybe they did.
Gotcha.
I would have to look at a log to tell if they sped up. Maybe they do. The fact that I would have to look at a log means that if they do speed up, it doesn't matter because you can't feel
Yeah, it's
it.
like yeah, it's like yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that boss needs a lot of work. Like a lot of work. If there's a boss that's going to get reworked like Council of Blood or Halundras, that one needs it.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Which we're like at time, but I want to talk about the Dragonriding boss, and this is gonna be short because honestly, that boss is really fucking good.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so
All right, let's explain this. So get me on board with this because
okay.
any vehicle boss have traditionally not been great.
So
We'll say.
here's the trick. Okay,
Okay.
you're not dragon riding.
It doesn't. Not gonna lie, it doesn't make sense. But
Okay,
okay, let's
so
hear
the
this.
boss has 3 platforms. Okay, every platform is just a regular boss fight. Okay, and those are good. All of those, like I'm not gonna go through the mechanics. They're just good fight. Like it's a if you just like had a thing that you went and clicked to go from one platform to the next one, it would be a structurally like good boss fight. It would be fine.
Bet you if you fell through a floor, best boss fight ever, by the way.
Well, the dragon riding for at least heroic is only for going in between the platforms,
Okay.
and that by itself is not particularly interesting, right? That's kind of just like dragon riding in a straight line from platform to platform. There's obstacles in the way. There are fire orbs that are there, and actually in between the second and third platforms, those fire orbs move in different ways, and so you got to dodge them as you're getting across. They don't one shot. You have to eat like
Okay.
3 of them in order to die. So it's like you have room for error.
Mm-hmm.
But the boss is going to fly across as well. And you can get there before the boss does. That's possible.
Oh, okay.
And when the boss lands, he's going to do this supernova cast. And you have to he's going to get a shield. You have to break the shield before he finishes the cast in order to stop the cast or the raid wipes.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to help enable that, there are green orbs among the red orbs that you're supposed to dodge. The green orbs give you vigor to help you get across more quickly, so you get to fly faster.
Uh-huh.
And then also they give you a damage buff.
Oh, nice.
They give the whole raid a damage buff, not just you.
Yeah.
So for the first one you can get 10, the second one I think you can get 11 or 12.
Wow.
And each one is a 5% buff, so it's like a 50%, 60% damage buff. But ultimately, the biggest thing for us that we ended up figuring out, like we saw the final phase a few times. No, well, okay, we saw the final platform a few times. We did not see the final. We only saw the final phase with actually everybody alive once.
Uh-huh.
You really just need your DPS to speed to the other platform. They have to go fast. So it's
Right.
actually the dragon riding phase is as close as they could get to putting like a dragon riding race in a raid boss without actually making it the make or break of the fight. Right? Like ultimately when we get to this on Mythic, we're going to just have like there's kind of lanes of the orbs that you can use So you can kind of like
Gotcha.
say like, hey, all the DPS go down the right lane. You just go through
Yeah.
the same orb as the people in front of you, and you just pick up the vigor, and you just keep going, and you get there, and you land, and you DPS the boss immediately, and you let the healers go through the left lane that takes longer, and pick up the rest of the orbs. Because even if you're already on the ground, you still get the damage buff.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, that's fun. So like, yeah, so you could basically split. Yeah, to that point, you could split up your raid, and basically, some people can be more even more focused on. I guess the orbs because they give vigor. Everybody wants to get them, but
Right,
still, you can split up the raid and have like the longer pathway be taken by like healers or tanks, and
right,
then or a tank, and like shorter pathway could be taken by DPS.
yeah,
That's fun. And
yeah.
you said like so the individual platforms are solid too, just in terms of like
Yeah,
mechanics in the
so
fight.
like the conceit is he's a druid. On the first platform, he turns into a moonkin and he will spawn these fire beams. He'll sunfire the whole raid. He does like the Zenkiki thing where just like sunfire on everybody.
Yeah.
And that's just most of the healing thing. The fire beams leave permanent puddles and they spawn tornadoes and like all this stuff. And what we ended up doing is like starting on one side of the platform. It's a gigantic circular platform. Like this platform is the
Yeah.
size of Nizoth's room.
Oh, okay.
It's big.
Nice.
And so we started on one side and we just crossed every time he did fire beams, we do a big move towards the spot where we wanted to mount up and go towards the next platform. Um and then on the second one, he turns into a treant, like Resto Druid treant form,
Mm-hmm.
and he will do tranquility that spawns basically grubs from Kragmaw in Underrot.
Yeah.
Actually maybe closer to the mushrooms from the third boss of Underrot. But you
Okay.
just have to soak them. Like where you might in Underrot have your tank hit a defensive and run through them and then get dispelled. Similar deal without the dispel.
Okay.
Um, and any that you miss turn into trees that do pulsing ray damage. And
Gotcha.
there's other mechanics going on. Like those are just the special like phase mechanics. There's other stuff going on. There's a new tank mechanic that's pretty neat that I like. Um, and just like then on the final phase, he does both forms, so you deal with all of
Gotcha.
the mechanics.
Everything at
Um,
once. Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, just the fight was fun. Like I had a good time with it. The one thing that was not great, the transition from the platform to Dragonriding, you have to pick up a feather. The way you do that is you walk up to one and you hit your extra action button. But
Okay.
if multiple people walk up to one, only one of them gets to use it. And
Just
so
like
that
despawning and respawning really quickly,
or
basically.
like no, it just despawns. It's kind of like it's
Okay.
every one of them is single use. There's like 30 of them that spawn, so there's one for everybody. But this led to things like a priest running around, getting to one, hitting the extra action button, but somebody else had already taken it, so
Gotcha.
they had to then run to a different one. So the slow people in your raid just like get
We'll just
screwed.
be behind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
and
almost want to
they're
like. Sorry.
yeah they spawn in the random patterns. You can't just assign it. Like if it were like a Ragalan
Oh
thing
damn.
where
Yeah.
it was like a consistent pattern, you could just say like, here's where you go for yours, then that would be good. Or if they were multi-use, which is what I think is ultimately the better change, is just to
Yeah.
say like you can just everybody can interact with a feather, and it doesn't matter because it's ultimately not really adding difficulty. It's just frustrating. That was the
Yeah.
only thing in the fight that I was like, that kind of sucks.
That's awesome though. That sounds like a lot of fun. The whole like like the intermission between the phases is not just like a waiting for RP thing or
Yeah,
like what was it Rashog like getting knocked to the platforms like it's there's like some interactive stuff there, so
yeah.
that's really cool.
And it's in some ways it's similar to the Sarkareth downstairs phase, where like you're running around and picking up the little things that give you the
Yeah.
haste buff, except that you're dragon riding around and picking up green orbs to give everybody a damage buff. Um,
Yeah.
so you
That's
know,
awesome.
it's cool. And one of the mythic changes is that someone we have to see how it actually works when we do the testing in 2 weeks, but some number of people have to actually dragon ride during the main phase in order to catch things
Okay.
that are falling from the sky.
Oh, I want that job. Oh,
Yeah,
that'd be so
I
much fun.
know, right? It sounds like a neat thing. Like you
Yeah,
catch
that's
it
just
and
really
then
cool.
you like dive bomb the thing onto the boss and it does damage to the boss.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
So,
I'm excited to start seeing the mythic version of these fights because that
yeah.
starts. So I guess these were the last heroic fights that we were testing, and then
Yeah.
normal is open all this weekend.
Yep. Which
Um,
that boss that I mentioned was skipped for heroic testing, like I said, was broken in the
eh,
normal runs. People were able to kill it, just like mechanics didn't function.
yeah,
Um and so yeah, we will see what the mythic versions look like. Testing starts next week. Very excited about that. Hopefully we'll be able to actually, hopefully, feel the group. Uh,
Yeah.
so we will see. But yeah.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. No, it sounds like raid testing this week was good. I mean, it sounds like the raid in general there, other than say Nemu, or not, however you say that one.
Yeah.
Um, other than that boss, it seems like the rest of them solid. Seems like a pretty good raid tier coming up, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. The only other final thing, I know we're almost out of time. We had a couple of technical difficulties. We'll stay maybe a minute or two over. Blizzard did do a patch for Mythic Plus. They did some global changes to Mythic Plus just to get these out there. They have basically increased the health of all creatures by 14%, increased the damage of all creatures and their abilities by 13.46%. And so just a general health and damage increase across the board, Mythic Plus. The sort of a global or like, aura scaling change to the dungeons,
Yeah.
which is fair because I'd seen some things of like people in like 10.2 like normal level gear clearing like 20s, like
Yeah.
two chesting 20s.
And
So
there's a number of these that a number of spells that also got changed across, especially the new dungeons, the dungeons that are not already Mythic Plus dungeons like Everbloom and Throne of Tides. There's a bunch of those. Black Cold has a couple. Um, so we will see how everything ends up. But yeah, they buffed the dungeons this week because they were not tuned high enough.
not at all. I saw a couple of screenshots from PTR and I was like, oh man, am I gonna get my easy 20s done next season? So
Sounds like the answer is no.
yeah, no, not with this buff. So but I think that is everything unless you've got any other topics
No,
or
I think that
comments.
about wraps it up. Can't wait to have to splice together the 3 different videos from this episode.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's gonna be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place to chat about Expel Harm and Healing Elixir for Mistweavers. And to remind Anomoly that Healing Elixir is in fact in the Mistweaver tree.
I just never click it. Just never take it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.